Greetings from LA, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to continue on with our journeys, our discussions, our discoveries, and our explorations with respect to the recent releases made by the Criterion Collection during this year of 2024. And that brings us to a title which actually already currently exists in the Criterion Collection physical media catalog at spine number 175. But on the occasion of this year, 2024, the Criterion Collection has re-released this title, but this time employing the 4K UHD format and purported to be based on what is described as a new 4K digital restoration supervised and approved by the director. And this is a work which is described as being from the year 1998, and the director is Terry Gilliam. And the name of the work is Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. This is the electrifying, kinetic, absorbing, engaging, fascinating, furious, nauseating, frustrating, frightening, horrifying, and utterly entertaining film, which is described as being from the year 1998, and it is from the director Terry Gilliam, and the screenplay is credited to Terry Gilliam and Tony Grisoni and Todd Davis and Alex Cox. And in fact, when we talk about the screenplay and the screenplay credits and the development of the screenplay, which itself is a very fascinating and complex tale, we'll actually speak a little bit about that when we talk about one of the supplements later on in this video. But that is just one of the very fascinating production details, one of the very fascinating creative impulses that is at the very heart and soul of this film. One of which, of course, another which being, of course, the imaginative impulse and the creative genius of Terry Gilliam's involvement. Also, the producers, Patrick Cassavetes, Stephen Nemeth, and Leila Nabulsi, also very key creative force behind this film, as well as the story and the text. Of course, this is based upon the text by Hunter S. Thompson, based upon a book by Hunter S. Thompson, according to the credits. And another one of the key creative driving forces of this work is the cast. And one of the fun things about this film is seeing who is in the cast in terms of spotting all the cameos, and there are so many cameos of people that one will recognize here and there and everywhere. And of course, within that, or part of that milieu, or another driving force of this, are the two performances that are just truly captivating and breathtaking, show-stopping in their own ways, respectively. And I'm speaking about, of course, Benicio del Toro as Dr. Gonzo and Johnny Depp as Raoul Duke. And I'm speaking, of course, of this work, again from 1998. And it is Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. And my goodness, I'm already out of breath, in a manner of speaking, just speaking about it already. And I haven't even begun to scratch the surface. I'm not even about 5 minutes into this discussion. And already the film and the feelings about this film are leaving me breathless. And I think that's part of the reason why it has such a magnetic pull and charm about it. And it certainly has its spell cast over me as being a real fan and admirer of this work ever since or around the time circa its initial release back in the late 1990s. And so it is it's captivating. It's like a cinematic catapult, if you will. It's also described as a movie Valentine to the legacy and writings and prose, the gonzo journalism, if you will, of Hunter S. Thompson, who is undoubtedly one of the pulsating heartbeats of this work, really pulsating in almost this the creative juices are overflowing in a way that is truly, utterly electrifying indeed. And we have also embodied in that, or part of that, or a mirroring of that, the performances here by Benicio del Toro and Johnny Depp, who each bring their A game in their own acting method way, which is also something that we might touch upon when we talk about some of the other supplements of this release, including the many commentary tracks that are part of this stacked release from Criterion. And so there's so much going on here, and it is a classic. It is also a film that I think is not for everyone. It has a kind of reckoning quality to it. It has a wrecking ball quality to it. It feels like it's a combination of many different pulsating, contradictory forces. It's a film that is a journey film. It is a road trip movie or road trips movie. And I use the phrase trips very purposefully because one can ascribe to it many different meanings, kind of physical journey aspect, and also the chemically induced or drug induced aspect associated with that word. And that's a very important critical point as well, because this is a film that is also depicting results of or consequences of drug use. And there's a lot of drug use that's depicted in this film, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Thus, I think, among other things, inviting the question, welcoming the discussion in terms of people who watch this film, welcoming the discussion as to whether or not this film is categorized as a quote-unquote pro-drug film or quote-unquote anti-drug film, or pro-drug use film or anti-drug use film. And I think there is, I think, insofar as this becomes a discussion point, I think there is much to say. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about the commentary tracks and other supplements as part of this Criterion release. But that is just but one aspect of its dizzying, myriad, mirror-like, and labyrinthine quality. That's also very episodic. And it's at once very frightening and very surreal. It's also very witty and funny. And it goes into these places of dark humor and sometimes even truly disturbed and disturbing, chilling qualities about it, while also touching upon many different currents of socio-political and cultural aspects of 1970s America, while also being very much a current and product of the times, late 1990s, and the minds of Leon Bulsi and Terry Gilliam and Johnny Depp and Benicio del Toro and Hunter S. Thompson. So it's many things at once, and I think that's one of the great aspects of it. I mean, all these fireworks go off simultaneously when one watches this film, and so there's much to say about it. And just now, as I mentioned, I'm just breathless, trying to keep up with the film, just trying to even talk about it, and I haven't even scratched the surface of this film. So let me now try to endeavor to speak about the plot or story structure of this film, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. And I think if we were to try to do that, we could focus in on, essentially this film is a job assignment film where we have Raoul Duke, journalist Raoul Duke, and his attorney, Dr. Gonzo, essentially going on assignment to cover a Mint 400 motorcycle race. And so that takes them from Los Angeles to Las Vegas. And so essentially we cover that, or the film covers that journey and that aspect, and covering that and all the circumstances and consequences that essentially stem from that job assignment. So one can say that that is essentially the plot or story structure of this. But of course, there is so much going on. Part of it has to do with this covering of the journalistic aspect of this, which also brings into the four other subplots involving other events that are either purposefully covered or attempted to be covered or perhaps stumbled upon. That brings us to the hijinks and the episodic road trip nature of Dr. Gonzo and Raoul Duke, and that takes them to Las Vegas, and on the way along the way, they meet so many varied and assorted cast of characters, and sometimes maybe on the road, hitchhiking, other times in various hotels in Las Vegas, elevators of Las Vegas, the front desk of Las Vegas, and all the while we see or we understand that they are under the wild and profound and quite significant influence of many different drugs that they are taking, or they have already taken, or they are seen to be taking, as we go along with them, as we witness their journey. From one place to another place to another place, and we see this sort of hysteria and the almost surreal aspects of their reactions to each other and to the world around them. And sometimes we can kind of go along with what it is they are experiencing, but other times we are just third-party witness to the mayhem and the chaos. And that's part of that's part of the craft of this film, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, is that it sometimes depicts using special effects or sudden bursts of color or even computer graphics, etc. Suddenly we get a sense of the world shifting around our two protagonists or anti-heroes of this film. And we see sometimes how things are warped from their perspective. Also, we see how maybe they are reacting in a kind of objective viewpoint to things that seem otherwise quote unquote normal. But that also brings into question one of the aspects of our own perspective of what is quote unquote normal and what is quote unquote not normal or abnormal. And there are balloons here again, so that's probably maybe the computer's way of trying to go along with how things can shapeshift all at once here. And much like the shape-shifting nature of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, we have things that maybe come into question or allow us to call into question what is quote-unquote normal. And when we are given these questions in the context of the road journey movie that takes us to Las Vegas, which in many ways could be said to be one of the most sort of reality-bending places on the planet, in terms of night and day, in terms of winnings and losings, in terms of the true assortment of many different people, all walks of life, that combine and traverse and collide in this place called Las Vegas, where anything and everything seems to be possible in a kind of dazzling spirit of almost a carnage-like carnivalesque atmosphere. Of impulses and flashes of light and dazzling and shining acts, death-defying acts, and things that are truly mind-bending and surreal. We understand that the question of what is quote-unquote normal and what is quote-unquote not normal are on display in a constant tour de force as we drive through this film, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. And indeed, that question, or those questions, are tinted with a sense of abandon, a sense of wild abandon on the one hand, which also might veer into territories of comedy and humor. And that, I think, has a lot to do with some of the goings-on of, for instance, the performances of Benicio del Toro and Johnny Depp. I mean, sometimes the scenes can be incredibly funny, incredibly hilarious, and it's done on purpose. And that's also, I think, a reflection of Hunter S. Thompson's writings. It's kind of going for the gut type of tour de force, aggressive drive that is at the heart of the gonzo journalism style of writing and the one-of-a-kind prose. So there's a sense of laughing at the proceedings. There's also a sense of the melancholy and things that may be of going too far and excess that can be horrifying and frightening and truly almost repellent in a way. In many ways, in fact, and the film doesn't shy away from that. Indeed, too, one can say that Hunter S. Thompson's writings don't shy away from that as well. And so we see everything, warts and all, questioning what is normal, what is not normal, and perhaps even questioning the question. in terms of the context in which this film brings us to the very heart and center of asking those questions and questioning those questions, while giving us this swirl of social commentary and a kind of look back and of the glitter and glamour, and also the melancholy and sadness and loss, and maybe the wave effect, if you will, to refer to one of the very famous writings of Hunter S. Thompson and what's known as colloquially the wave speech, the idea of what can be achieved, but what happens when things recede and are broken, to the point of acknowledging the excess, and what will happen in terms of the aftermath. And these are really profound questions that are at the very heart of Hunter S. Thompson's writing Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, one can suggest, as well as being at the very heart of the film by Terry Gilliam and company called Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. It is a very complex film. It is a film that is dazzling and dizzying, and I use those phrases many times over the course of this discussion. I'll probably use them more as we go along. That's really the case. I mean, there are moments that are eye-opening and eye-popping. There are moments that are really shocking and gross, and there are moments that are just WTF. You kind of do a double take and you think, wait a minute, did I just hear what I think I heard, or did I just see what I think I saw? I mean, that kind of shocking, over-the-top nature that is also at the heart of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. And that's all done on purpose. It's done on purpose to give us a sense of unease. I think it's give us a sense of confusion as to how we are to take this film. But I think that's also part of the engagement of this, is acknowledging that, as I say, it can be many fireworks going off at once. It can be many different feelings that we feel simultaneously. And maybe some of those, or most of those feelings, or maybe all of those feelings that we feel as viewers might be inconsistent with each other, might be contradictory to each other. But I think that's okay, because it is providing a kind of mindset that is questioning the questions, as well as giving us, applying that kind of drug-induced mode and haziness, where anything seems to be possible. And where we have things of anything seemingly being possible, and a kind of potential optimism of that outcome, we also understand that just as easily as those outcomes might have a hint of optimism, they might also have just as easily the hint of sarcasm and cynicism and dread as well. Thus, the very meaning and the essence of the unknown, of the beyond. And that, I think, is a very potentially hopeful prospect, but perhaps gradually, as the years pass and we see a kind of cynicism creeping in terms of the changing political landscape of the 1970s that Hunter S. Thompson is driving at, including, among other things, certain political events of, say, U.S. politics and presidential politics of the time. We see, from Hunter S. Thompson's perspective anyway, and the notion of culture and counterculture, and majority and silent majority, and domestic politics, and also sort of global political dimensions to U.S. politics, and interventions abroad, etc. during this time. I mean, that's all bubbling beneath the surface, or sometimes it bursts through in a way that is, again, that is undeniable, and very much something where we question what is at the very heart of quote-unquote normal. What does this mean to be normal? And are we indeed meant to feel like there is a definitive meaning to this word normal? Or maybe there is something that of a multifaceted nature that can be, as I say, both optimistic and reassuring, but also can be terrifying and cynical and frightening at the same time, while giving us, I think, those questions, both in direct terms and also in very metaphorical terms, in this tornado of a film. Dazzling special effects, bright flashing lights, the swirl of things changing before our very eyes, monsters, drug-induced visions of monsters, shape-shifting, and drink and excess, drug use and excess, and the interactions with people, and the ugliness that we see sometimes in terms of the engagement of human interactions. And that is, and I throw into that equation the interactions of our two protagonists or anti-heroes, Raoul Duke and Dr. Gonzo, as portrayed by Johnny Depp and Benicio del Toro, respectively. And we see them in a kind of the throes of excess and all the horrors that can bring with it as they go from place to place to place, from episode to episode to episode, weaving in and out of time, as it were, and just not quite knowing what will come next. And then waking up from a kind of the next morning after a truly a WTF nights before, not knowing what has happened, but and perhaps also not knowing what's going forward beyond them, but all the while trying to get a sense of what's going on, a sense of place, a sense of time via the acts of journalism or gonzo journalism, while at the same time just cascading into this realm of mayhem and madness. It is a dazzling feat indeed, and truly one of the kind of epic films of the late 1990s, truly one of the dazzling films of Terry Gilliam's directorial filmography. And the performances are just top notch, again, each in their own ways, show stopping, show stopping, show stopping. Benicio del Toro and the physicality of his role, it's just, it's at once just jaw aghast, jaw open type of WTF, shocking and repulsive in terms of the characterization, which makes it even more enthralling and what's going on. And of course, the incredible hypnotic mannerisms of Raoul Duke in the hands of Johnny Depp's performance, down to the hair, the way that the hair looks, and the eyes going back and forth, and the movement of the neck, and the way that the cigarette holder just sort of snaps up and down, and the way that the eyes go are shone through the glasses, etc. All the mannerisms down, perhaps giving us again a sense of the contradictions. The excess and exterior might be its own impenetrable shell, where the interior hearts are truly impenetrable, or perhaps there is something of the penetrable. There's something of the knowing what is within, or within the bounds that is clouded by the excess, and perhaps those are shining through in those little detailed moments that we see in these great performances by, among others, Benicio del Toro and Johnny Depp. I mean, there are moments where one can sense perhaps the recognition of the excess, or perhaps the recognition of going too far, and while going too far at the same time. And so it's that swirl of a hurricane, tornado-like complexity that really drives this. And I think it begs so many questions that just pull one in many different directions. But I think that's part of the appeal and allure of a work like this, and indeed any great film in the filmography of Terry Gilliam. It is this is an intense film indeed, and I'm very glad it's reemerging in this way in the Criterion Collection physical media catalog. We'll speak a little bit about this later, but again, this is the new release from 2024. We have had previous releases from Criterion in the past, including this DVD release, and then also the Blu-ray release from a little bit later. But here we have the 4K restoration, which we'll talk about in a moment. But yeah, this is what a film this is. I mean, I remember too, just moving before we move on to the next topic of this video, I remember just watching this film circa the time of its initial release, and not quite knowing how to take this film. I was left stunned and confused. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I didn't know. I felt like I was along for the ride, but I also felt repulsed at this, and I just felt turned off at the same time. And I think that was part of the point, you know. And it was around this time I was still in my mid to late teenage years, I think, and I was late teenage years, and I was just beginning to understand who Hunter S. Thompson was, and becoming acquainted with his writings. And so And then after doing that, and I don't claim to be an expert when it comes to Hunter S. Thompson, but then watching this film over and over again over the years, it just created the sense that those contradictions remained intact. But I think that's part of the point. And I don't, I mean, one can, I think, watch this film and not necessarily need to read the writings of Hunter S. Thompson necessarily to still be fully engaged with this film. It's no prerequisite, I think. But I think for me personally, upon reading Hunter S. Thompson's writings and then watching this film again and again, really makes this a whole-bodied experience that just lifts it to a kind of nth degree of WTFery. And so I'm truly grateful for the opportunity to watch this film again. Given that context, again, from my own subjective viewpoint and my engagement of this work. But for you, your engagement is of course your own. So please feel free to engage with it how you feel. But in any event, one of the methods of engagement will be through this Criterion release, and it is a really stellar release. And I'll talk a little bit more about the contours of that a little bit later in this video. But for now, my dear friends, yes, this is the work which is Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. The Criterion Collection has released this film, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, courtesy of this new release or latest release from Criterion. And I say latest release because this is a work which already currently exists in the Criterion Collection physical media catalog at spine number 175. And we've seen previous releases of this before, starting with, for instance, the earlier DVD multi-disc release, which is what I have here. And then we had a Blu-ray release a little bit later. And then now we have, on the occasion of this 2024, or the year 2024, the 4K UHD plus Blu-ray combo edition. And this time this is purported to be based on what is described as a new 4K digital restoration. By the way, I have the 4K disc in the player. What I have here is the 4K disc plus Blu-ray disc, so 2 discs, of which I have the 4K disc in the player as we speak. It is a moving title 4K Blu-ray disc menu. It's really cool. This is a reflection of the illustrations of Ralph Steadman, which is a very key component of Hunter S. Thompson's Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and also in terms of the one of the other creative drives that is at the very fundamentals of Terry Gilliam's directed Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas film. We'll talk a little bit about later in the context of the supplements, but it has that quality to it. It's a sort of a moving picture type of image to it. So just for the sake of YouTube copyright, just in case, I've just blocked it out. So I apologize again for my poor editing choices, but I hope you can forgive me. But it's really, really great. So the 4K disc is in the machine, and this is described as being a new 4K digital restoration. And so I just want to point out too that the setup includes, in terms of its audio options, a 2.0 surround or the 5.1 surround, either of which I think is a really great choice when it comes to, I mean, part of this is, there's a kind of enveloping feel to it. There's also a way in which this film, when you watch it, you kind of look at it as a kind of bystander. I don't know, I don't mean to sound very I don't mean to sound overly pedestrian in terms of my limited knowledge base when it comes to this, but my feelings about that is sometimes I want to watch this film as a bystander, and sometimes I want to watch this film totally enveloped in the in the hurricane of the film. And so that really drives my choice whether I watch it in 2.0 or 5.1. But either choice for me is a real enthralling experience. And then just speaking of the presentation itself, I've removed the booklet prior to the start of this. And among other things, it's a stable booklet, which we'll talk about later as well. But among other things on its pages, it does say about the master, and I quote, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is presented in the aspect ratio of 2.39 to 1 on the 4K Ultra HD disc and 2.35 to 1 on the Blu-ray. Supervised and approved by director Terry Gilliam, this new 4K restoration was created from the 35mm original camera negative. A 35mm print courtesy of Universal Pictures was used as a color reference. The 2.0 surround soundtrack was remastered from the original magnetic 6-track masters. The 5.1 surround soundtrack was remastered from the original 35mm stems and the 35mm 5.1 DTS print master. The feature is presented in Dolby Vision HDR high dynamic range on the 4K UHD disc and high definition SDR standard dynamic range on the Blu-ray. So I should also point out that, I know that there have been other releases by this outside of Criterion. For instance, I know the Arrow release. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to get the Arrow release for certain reasons. So I wish I could, but I just can't at the moment. But unfortunately, I'm not able to provide a sort of comparison analysis, a comparative analysis between the Arrow release and this Criterion release. So I apologize for that profusely, but I hope you understand I'm not able to do that at this time. And I know that there are other additional features and aspects of the most recent Arrow release, for instance, that might serve to complement aspects of and the contours of the Criterion release as well. So I acknowledge that this is perhaps not the most complete release in terms of all the supplements and materials that have been made regarding Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. So if you want to get a more complete picture, if you want to have a sense of all the releases that are out there, of course, you're welcome to consider the Arrow release as well as other releases out there where they exist. But for me right now, let me just focus on the Criterion and my own experiences with the film via this Criterion release. And so, I note the difference in the aspect ratio from the Blu-ray presentation, which is also how we saw it in, say, earlier Criterion releases from years past, and the 4K presentation, at least as it's described in the materials. So I was trying to catch the difference, and I really couldn't catch the difference. Again, my eyes are very, very limited in my own knowledge base when it comes to that, so I apologize for not being more acute. I can say, too, that in terms of the presentation quality, I did get a sense of some differences where I felt that there was, maybe for lack of a better phrase, there was a kind of golden hue in some areas, and especially in some of the interior scenes in the hotels and the casinos that didn't negatively affect my experience with the film, when I watched it in the 4K. But rather, I felt like there was this maybe a nuanced sense of heat. I don't know if that makes sense, applied to some aspects of it. Not to say it wasn't there at the beginning, because the film, I think, inherently is a very hot film. There's a lot of desert scenes, there's a lot of sunshine, there's a lot of blinding light, there's smoke and sweat, etc. So, but there's also a kind of a sense in some aspects of the 4K, at least in terms of my eyes, a kind of heat or a kind of glow that exists, not everywhere, not consistently throughout, but every once in a while I get a sense of that, which makes me, I don't know, it makes me feel even more invited into the film, if that makes any sense. But then when I'm entering into the world, I feel like I'm being slapped in the face, which is, I think, part of the point, because I'm just being jarred and just pulled here, there, and everywhere in that way. So in that way, I felt like I felt even more involved in the film. Not to say that I wasn't before. I was always feeling like I was involved in the film, but then I just felt that there were more avenues for me to enter in that way. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it felt it had that kind of welcoming feel, while also feeling like there was a sharpness of detail. When you can see details like the beads of sweat and the contours of the way that the pupils and the eyes look, etc. And it's always been there in the Blu-ray. So I think the Blu-ray has always been, I think, a very reliable source for me in terms of watching this film. But it just had those little extra details, I think, that made the watching of the 4K, at least for me, yet another great way to watch this film. So I'm glad I have both options in terms of the Blu-ray and in terms of the 4K. But I'm slightly edging myself towards using the 4K as my default version in terms of watching this film going forward, because I really enjoyed it. Now, that's my own subjective experience, so I don't know how other people might feel about this. Other people might feel like the Blu-ray is their is their best version, or maybe other non-Criterion versions are the versions that you prefer. If you feel that way, that I think is very fine. I think it's also reflective of the fact that this is a film that is, again, doing so many things at once, and so I don't know if I can say that there is really one definitive version of this film. I think the more versions out there, I think in an interesting way, the healthier the discussion would be on this film. Not to say that it's unhealthy before, maybe I should take that back. What I mean to say is, I think the more versions out there, I think that's more, it's a reflection of just how myriad this film is operating and acting, let me put it that way. And I mean that wholly complementarily. And it's how rich this film is. And so maybe I can anticipate, maybe for some people, that this version, this 4K version, could be the best place to go. Maybe for others it isn't. It could be seen as a certain disappointment. Again, depending on one's subjective take on and subjective engagement with the film Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. But I can only speak from my own subjective experience here. So I can say that I found it ever more so, that much more inviting of a film that and presentations that were already inviting to begin with. So in that way, and then when I'm invited into the world, again, I'm just slapped in the face back and forth, just like I feel like I'm meant to or designed to, in terms of the way that this film is designed. So bravo indeed for this series. And so now let us turn our attention, if I may, to the supplements of the film and this Criterion release. And so the first place let's go to is the commentary tracks. So there are 3 commentary tracks with the Criterion release. 3. And so the first one that is listed here is the commentary track with Terry Gilliam. And this is described as, this commentary track recorded for the Criterion Collection in London in 2002 features director Terry Gilliam. So this is commentary track number 1. This is Terry Gilliam kind of one-on-one, and as he's watching the film. And he's talking about many things about, for instance, the choices in the music and the songs that are chosen. And one of the things that's so key of this film is the musical landscape of this and the key choices from beginning, middle, and all the way up to the end. And then also the importance of trying to the extent possible, adhering to the spirit of the illustrations by Ralph Steadman, who was a kind of key visual concepts that are inherently associated, forever associated with Hunter S. Thompson and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. So this is also a key point for Terry Gilliam to the extent, and speaking of Hunter S. Thompson and the text, considering it one of the great American books. And then, too, speaking about, among other things, the performances by Benicio del Toro and Johnny Depp, how they had a kind of different approach to things, which is also reflected elsewhere. Maybe in terms of the method, the acting methods that were employed by each actor. They had certain contrasting styles, which I think worked really well for their own characterizations. Benicio del Toro has this way of really trying to, in terms of the application of a certain method, trying to really encapsulate certain feelings and moods, and that might involve needing to rely on many different takes on a scene, whereas Johnny Depp is relying on a lot of information to be processed and developed down to certain mannerisms, such that that would facilitate the performance takes, maybe in terms of quantity, relatively few performance takes to be required, because it's all set up in the kind of construction. But I think that combination suits the characterizations of Dr. Gonzo and Raoul Duke perfectly, and it's that great contrast between the two characterizations that also creates a real need for a real tension of the film, which is very important. They are acquaintances, but they're also rivals, and oftentimes they are they are loggerheads, in a manner of speaking. I mean, there's a tension between them sometimes. Sometimes there's just a confusion as to what it is they're doing. They are allies. They are also foes in a way, and so that tense rivalry-based relationship between the two of them is one of the compelling things of this, and I think it's reflective in the way in which they are performed respectively. So, and then two, the idea of Las Vegas and the use of computer graphics in some scenes. Some of the actors that are portrayed here, Christina Ricci and Gary Busey and others. I mean, those are but a few of many, many cameo appearances in this film. Tobey Maguire, etc. And also the idea of Las Vegas, the decadence of Las Vegas, almost the grotesque, grand guignol aspect of Las Vegas during this time, and some of the aspects of shooting in Las Vegas. Bazooka circus instead of circus, etc., and using archival footage in some aspects, but then also creating this set carnival-like atmosphere, altering perceptions that leads to the way that drug use is shown in this film. And Terry Gilliam is suggesting that maybe the marketing might have suggested that this is from the Universal might have suggested that this is a type of fun, zany road trip movie. But in fact, from Terry Gilliam's perspective, this was very much a film that was showing the gross nature of the drug use of these two people, and just the way in which it's so almost decaying in this over-the-top way. So in that way, it could be seen as very much an anti-drug use movie, and so which is, I think, a really compelling point that he makes. And then just other details too as well, like he points out some bloopers that occur in some of the scenes. I mean, there's a scene involving the desert and a stop by a patrol officer, and you can see a wire on the ground that really shouldn't be there. And also aspects of other Hunter S. Thompson as well. Hunter S. Thompson's involvement, Terry Gilliam's relationship with Hunter S. Thompson, also Terry Gilliam's involvement in the project, how he was involved, relatively speaking, kind of late, because this was already a kind of rocky production prior to Terry Gilliam's involvement. But when Terry Gilliam got involved and the project went underway, it was relatively speaking on time and on budget. So it is a Terry Gilliam commentary track through and through. It's really quite something indeed. So that's the first commentary track. So please check it out if you can with the commentary track with Terry Gilliam. But that's commentary track number one. And then the second commentary track on display here is with Leila Bulsi and Johnny Depp and Benicio del Toro. And Leila Bulsi is one of the producers and one of the driving forces of eventually getting this film off the ground and made, as it were. And this is described as, this commentary track featuring producer Leila Nabulsi and actors Johnny Depp and Benicio del Toro was recorded for the Criterion Collection in Los Angeles and London in 2002. This is really great too, because again, speaking about Ralph Steadman and also about Terry Gilliam and his eventual involvement, how there was how this film was initially being planned to be made prior to Terry Gilliam's involvement, and that involves another writer-director, Alex Cox. And it's mentioned a little bit later as to how and why, according to Leila Bulsi, why Alex Cox ended up not being involved in the project. And some of the reasons that the producer cites during this commentary track is the way in which Alex Cox was handling some of the writings of Hunter S. Thompson, and specifically some of the speeches or very famous prose passages of Hunter S. Thompson. And in particular, the handling of what is known colloquially, a very famous writing known as the wave speech, and how Alex Cox wanted to treat the wave speech versus what Leila Bulsi had in terms of the treatment of the wave speech, and how eventually the wave speech is figured into the film as directed by Terry Gilliam. And so that's one of the reasons that the producer cites during the commentary track in terms of the creative differences between the production and Alex Cox. But then ultimately Terry Gilliam came on board, and the rest, as they say, is history. And then two, speaking about aspects of how to introduce the world of Hunter S. Thompson or Raoul Duke and Dr. Gonzo, and how the film essentially just throws us into their world without necessarily giving us, per se, a kind of lead up or background as to who they are and what led them to the places that we find them as the film opens. So it's essentially just throws us into the circumstances as they are happening without much context to start the film. But I think that was part of the reason for the design of the story structure, and then also it just allows for us to become curious, maybe organically and naturally, and also just to maybe mirror that kind of swirl of confusion that's part of the proceedings. That's so much key to, I think, the success of this film, creative success of this film, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. So that was done on purpose. But they do have pasts, and they are real life people, Hunter Thompson and uh, 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 Dr. Gonzo, or Oscar Zeta Acosta, and about whom we'll speak a little bit more when we get to some of the other supplements. And so those details do emerge. And indeed, we understand, according to, again, Johnny Depp and Benicio del Toro, who are also great participants in this commentary track, we understand that they really went to great lengths to capture the details of the people that they were portraying. So for Benicio del Toro, trying to get a sense of who Oscar Zeta Acosta was and is and was, and getting a sense through some of the writings that were available, and also the anecdotes from Hunter S. Thompson and others about him, and just trying to capture those unexpected points and the details of the physical attributes and details, all the way down to things like really uh, uh, just details that I wasn't aware of until I heard the commentary track for the first time. Like aspects about scars of cigarette burns and things of that sort, as well as other things. So again, aspects that are quite overwhelming and heavily detail oriented, and it suggests something that is incredibly compelling and quite frightening at the same time, which is, I think, apropos the performance of Dr. Gonzo is portrayed brilliantly by Benicio del Toro here, and expressed to a certain degree in this commentary track, as well as from Johnny Depp and his approach to the role of Raoul Duke and to Hunter S. Thompson, and trying to essentially expressing, just like Leon Bolsi does and others, expressing kind of catch-22 aspect of their involvement in this, because they could disappoint, and they could disappoint so many fans and admirers of this work, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. So, not to mention, of course, potentially disappointing Hunter S. Thompson himself, who was not just the writer, but also very much involved in the production. So, that there was a lot of creative risk here, but they still wanted to do it. Johnny Depp wanted to do it, and my goodness, the details are extraordinary, and the things that he was paying attention to is absolutely extraordinary. And he also expresses a little bit about his relationship with Hunter S. Thompson, which is another aspect of another supplement, which we'll talk about later in this video. Talking about the work itself, and maybe it was considered by some, maybe many, to be an unfilmable book, but in the hands of Leila Bolsi and Johnny Depp and Benicio del Toro, it's a tough book, but it's not unfilmable, as shown in the results. I mean, this is the film Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, but the book is similar, but it's also its own entity, and I think they respect that very much so. And I mean, other details too, like as they're watching the film, seeing how they felt about there's a scene involving Gary Busey and a certain choice made in that, and how they felt that how would Hunter S. Thompson react to it, because it's a little bit different as to how it's shown in the film versus how it was originally conceived, etc. Also working with some of the other extras, and there's some scenes too involving scene involving the Matrix and Leila Bolsi and Hunter S. Thompson specifically, working with Terry Gilliam and wanting to work with Terry Gilliam, et cetera, et cetera. So this is also a great commentary track, so please check this out if you can. That's the second of three, because then there's a third one, which is Hunter S. Thompson. This conversation with the late author Hunter S. Thompson, conducted by producer Leila Bolsi, was recorded for the Criterion Collection at Thompson's home near Aspen, Colorado in 2002. So this is essentially just a recording in the home, and Hunter S. Thompson is being asked these many questions, and just reflecting on his involvement in the film in his very Hunter S. Thompson sort of way. I mean, this commentary track is it's wow. This is if you haven't heard this before, this is something else. I mean, you'll get everything, you'll get these comments that are sometimes they're all on point, but sometimes they can be quite cruel, and quite acerbic from Hunter S. Thompson, and you can hear Lionel Bolsey and others trying essentially to try to calm him down a little bit, and they laugh at the same time, and also asking Hunter S. Thompson about his feelings about the film and working with Terry Gilliam, and he's very Hunter S. Thompson, almost Gonzo. Prose like way, very aggressive in some points, and then very honest throughout, and sometimes maybe quite overly aggressively so. But that's the Hunter S. Thompson mystique, and that's the atmosphere that is. So it's very much Hunter S. Thompson, all the way down to noises. Occasionally, you hear these high pitched. Almost squealing noises that are made by Hunter S. Thompson, which is almost quite it's quite aggravating to the ear. But that's also part of the point, I think. I mean, this is very much a Hunter S. Thompson experience, listening to this commentary track, as much as reading the text or watching the film. I mean, it's its own experience. So hold on tight if you haven't heard the commentary track with Hunter S. Thompson, but it's truly one of a kind experience, and so you get a sense of Hunter S. Thompson, the artist and the writer, and his experience and feelings, and also questions that are sometimes asked to him by people over the telephone, and how he feels about the legacy of this of his writings, and also by extension the film, etc. And so sometimes he'll give direct answers, sometimes he'll be somewhat evasive, and but in that playful way. Sometimes his comments might be quite direct, maybe to some might be bordering on, or perhaps extending into the realm of the offensive. But again, this is the Hunter S. Thompson experience embodied in this commentary track. So in that way, it's incredibly valuable, incredibly important in the context of the Criterion release of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. So commentary track, the third commentary track, but this time with Hunter S. Thompson. So please check it out if you can. So these are the commentary tracks which are from past releases. But it's great to have them now. Of course, there are many other materials that have been made about Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. I'm sure many other commentary tracks that are available. But for what it's worth, I think these three highlight many different facets that are each very illuminating in their own way, thus creating further jumping off points for a cinema journey into the world of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. So they're very, very valuable. So I'm glad that they're being carried over from past releases like they are for this new current Criterion release. And now we have the Blu-ray disc in the player behind me, and the reason for that is I'd like to now focus on the supplements that are found with this Criterion release. So as per past examples, what Criterion has done is they have the 4K disc and then the Blu-ray disc, and we have the 4K disc showcasing the film in HDR, and then the Blu-ray disc also showcasing the film SDR. And then in each instance, you also have the option to listen to the commentary tracks while watching the film, or just watching the film without the commentary tracks on. So that's the 4K disc and the Blu-ray disc. But the 4K disc does not have the supplements. If you want to go to the supplements, you're going to have to go to the Blu-ray disc. And so that's why I have the Blu-ray disc in the player right now. And again, it has that moving image Ralph Steadman illustration quality to it, which is really great, but I've just blocked off for purposes of the YouTube copyright situation, so I hope you can forgive me. But I do have the menus here, and in addition to the commentaries menu and the chapters and the audio options, there is a supplements menu, and I press that, and it has two categories: the film and the source. And then so we have two categories. So let's press on the one that says the film, and that brings us to a sub menu. And it has deleted scenes, storyboards, production designs, stills gallery, Depp Thompson correspondence, Hunter Goes to Hollywood, not the screenplay, and a study in marketing. So what are these? So the first one is deleted scenes, and I press on this, and it says there are three deleted scenes, or three scenes that are described here, and they're called the Mint 400, and the DA from GA, or the District Attorney from Georgia, and the Hardware Barn. And it says here, the following deleted scenes, selected by director Terry Gilliam, were assembled from original work print footage. Each scene is presented with optional commentary by Gilliam, which may be heard at any time by pressing the audio key on your remote. So, these are assembly quality scenes that aren't included in the final product. Although I think actually one of the scenes, I think if I might be mistaken, if I am, please forgive me, but I think one of the scenes is actually you see a really brief glimpse of it in one of the trailers, in fact. But in any event, so we have some extensions here, and you do have the option of listening to Terry Gilliam's audio commentary on each of these scenes as to why they were excised and not included, etc. I think primarily the reasons he cites for each of them, or for at least two of them, is for pacing reasons. And I think for the third one, it was how to end the film, or how to create a kind of closure or denouement or coda to the film as well. So these pacing and consider and overall concluding considerations, I think, are what form the heart of the reasons why they were excised, according to Terry Gilliam's great commentary track. But great to have here, again, for those who want a fuller, more collective exploration of the work. These are all very fascinating decisions, and so it's very interesting to consider what the film would have been like with these inclusions. But in any event, here they are for your cinema consumption, as it were. So please check these out if you can. So these are the deleted scenes. Next, we have storyboards, and here we have a slideshow-like aspect here. So you press on that, and it goes to a selection. It's described here, presented here as a selection of Terry Gilliam's storyboards for Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and it has opening sequence, the Mint Hotel, Baker, the Flamingo Hotel, DA's convention, Adrenochrome, Duke drives Gonzo to the airport, and final sequence. So these are the hand-drawn storyboards, and so it's, again, watching the storyboards or being privy to some of the storyboards is great, because I mean, among other things, the visual style and the structure is so key to this film. So it's great to have these, and again, these various examples here are really great. So please check this out if you can. It's sort of this why am I forgetting the word? I'm sorry. I'm talking about this film, just catches me without any breath. I apologize, but it's slideshow. Yes, slideshow presentation quality. So please check it out if you can. Next is production design. It's also slideshow quality, and I press it, and it goes right into the description here, which is the following illustrations were executed by storyboard artists under the direction of production designer Alex McDowell. To navigate the sequence, press the right arrow on your remote to move forward and the left arrow to move backward. To exit, press enter. So this is really quite great, really great indeed. And the illustrations here for the designs, they're very detailed and incredibly rich, and these are works of art in their own way. So it's wonderful to have this again in the slideshow presentation quality. So please check this out if you can, as one of the supplements here. Next, we have stills galleries. So it's the same thing. This is also slideshow presentation type, and it says here, this collection of production stills taken by set photographer Peter Mountain shows the cast and crew at work on Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. To navigate this title sequence, press the right arrow on your remote to move forward and the left arrow to move backward. To exit, press enter. So here we have the production stills, some of which actually I think were used in some of the marketing materials. So you might recognize some of the images as being quite familiar for those who know how this film was marketed in some of the posters. Not for all of them, but for some of them. So, but they're all, I think, again, seeing just everyone at work and the production stills quality, this is really great indeed. So here's another slideshow presentation supplement here from Criterion, again carried over from previous releases. So this is really great. So please check that out if you can as well. Stills gallery. And then returning to the menu, we have Depp Thompson correspondence. And I press on this and it says, in preparation for portraying author Hunter S. Thompson, actor Johnny Depp spent a great deal of time with him, and they maintained close contact throughout the production. For the following, recorded for the Criterion Collection in London in 2002, Depp selected some of their written correspondence and read it on camera. This is really great because it's Johnny Depp reading the letters that they shared back and forth, and so you see Johnny Depp sometimes he's reading from Hunter S. Thompson a letter, Dr. Depp talking about maybe a convention in Louisville, or talking about the Cannes Film Festival, or talking about the Rolling Stones, or getting together. And Johnny Depp also writing back, talking about wanting to meet with Hunter S. Thompson at some point. And also, one of the things that you hear Johnny Depp reading these texts from Hunter S. Thompson, these letters from Hunter S. Thompson, and they're written in that Hunter S. Thompson way. It's incredible, absolutely incredible. Uh, and one of the things that's so incredible about it is there's at some point in the correspondence, there's a point where Johnny Depp describes how during the production they were designing his performance of Hunter S. Thompson, Raoul Duke, and I wanted to show Hunter S. Thompson himself, and just sending, I think, pictures. And I think Hunter S. Thompson responded with some remarks maybe Johnny Depp took as somewhat flippant or somewhat dismissive. And then so Johnny Depp wrote back in a very, I think, heartfelt way about how this was something he was really, really intensely involved in, and was taking care and trying to get into the details, wanting to respect the legacy of Hunter S. Thompson, but also trying to just say that he wouldn't be a kind of punching bag, but that he's taking this very seriously, and that he respects Hunter S. Thompson, but also he wants respect as an artist, trying to respect his legacy. And so that kind of very honest approach to Hunter S. Thompson's response, I think, elicited another interesting response back. But in any event, it's a really interesting take on just the extent to which Johnny Depp was really trying to take care to respect Hunter S. Thompson, not offend him, but also at the same time needing to have his own space to develop his own portrayal of Raoul Duke in the film Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. So this is one of the fascinating aspects that emerges here from this. So this is really great. So please check this out if you can. It's really quite wonderful. Oh, I should say, I'm so sorry, I forgot to mention that the Depp Thompson correspondence section is approximately 14 minutes, so please check that out if you can. But next up we have Hunter Goes to Hollywood, and this is described as, and I quote, director Wayne Ewing spent almost 20 years filming Hunter S. Thompson for his 2003 documentary, Breakfast with Hunter. This short piece by Ewing follows Thompson on his visit to the set of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. This is approximately 11 minutes. And so we have essentially Hunter S. Thompson going to LA, going to Hollywood. We see him at the hotel, meeting, among other people, Johnny Depp. There's a gift exchange, an interesting discussion there. We see Hunter S. Thompson in full Hunter S. Thompson mode, and we see him and his looks and mannerisms. So for those who maybe are watching this film for the first time, or maybe getting acquainted with the persona of Hunter S. Thompson for the first time, and this is one of the great places to go. You actually see Hunter S. Thompson and also his engagement with the production in the film, including, for instance, visiting the set on one of the occasions. I mean, there's a moment in this where we see him visiting a scene involving a courtroom about midway, or maybe in the second half of the film, the loathing part of the film, perhaps, fear and loathing. And then there's a scene involving the Matrix where he has a direct role to play as well. There's an interesting little way in which this excerpt ends about what take was used by Terry Gilliam in that scene versus what take Hunter S. Thompson preferred. So that's an interesting anecdote. Makes me laugh every time I see that. So this is great. So Hunter Goes to Hollywood. This excerpt is approximately 11 minutes. So please check this out if you can. Then we have Not the Screenplay, which is audio discussion of WGA dispute, and this is described as, and also address pattern. So, and I quote, there were many screenplay adaptations of Hunter S. Thompson's book, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, over the years, which ultimately resulted in a protracted dispute over who should receive credit when Terry Gilliam's film was released. Presented here is an audio discussion of that dispute, featuring Gilliam, co-screenwriter Tony Rossoni, and producer Leila Nabulsi. Also included is Address Pattern, a short film by Gilliam made as the dispute raged. It is presented with optional commentary by Gilliam, which may be heard by pressing the audio key on your remote at any time. So, yes, I mentioned earlier about how, among other things, in the production of this film, there was an interesting, described here as a dispute in terms of the WGA Writers Guild of America. And the issue came up as to how the story or the screenplay would be credited, which is a very important one in terms of the production of any film. And so that brings to the fore the details as to what the genesis of this film was and all the stages of the various scripts that were written, which then leads to the essentially eventual reasoning why this film is the screenplay is credited to Terry Gilliam and Tony Grisoni and Todd Davies and Alex Cox. But they do describe the details of what the dispute was and the back and forth in terms of the procedure, in terms of the how to resolve the issue, and the many people that were involved, at least from the perspective of Tony Grisoni and Terry Gilliam on the one, and also Lena Bolsey on the other, and how eventually what they needed to do, what their side needed to do in order to essentially try to get credit for the screenplay, at least for Tony Grisoni and Terry Gilliam. Versus what Lena Bolsey had to do in order to convince the WGA of this, and there's a detail as to the sacrifice that she had to make artistically in order to get this dispute resolved. So also there's some further details as to why Alex Cox's involvement, again from their point of view, and what happened again from their point of view in terms of the creative differences that led Alex Cox to not be involved in the production at the end of the day. So very interesting details of this. So if you're interested in that type of nitty-gritty detail, very fascinating as a legal tendency towards it, which I find very fascinating. So please check this out if you can. It's audio, so but there's nothing wrong with that. It's really great. So it's a really great detailed discussion. And then associated with that is what's known as address pattern. This is a very short film. It has that wit, that acerbic wit of Terry Gilliam and company that is, again, with the understanding of what's going on with the WGA, it's undoubtedly directly relevant to that, a kind of take on that. So very short, but very apropos and to the point. So please check that out if you can. Wow. And then a study in marketing concludes this section of the supplements, which is trailer and then come to Las Vegas TV. So there's a number of different TV spots. I remember seeing some of these on TV when during its initial run. So another detail that comes to mind is and I forgot about this, and I always forget about this until I watch some of these supplements, was that this was released in 1998, and this was released around the same time as there's a big blockbuster film that was released at the same time, which is Godzilla, the Hollywood version of Godzilla in the late 1990s. So this was considered by Universal and company as being a potential counter-programming in terms of a film that is a different type of film released at the same time. And indeed, one of the TV spots that's included here makes a funny reference to, this is not Godzilla kind of thing. So, but anyway, and Terry Gilliam, let me say here that this is marketing Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas was a challenge, as it did not fit into any of the conventional Hollywood categories. Presented here are the trailer, featuring audio commentary by Terry Gilliam, and 7 television spots illustrating the varied attempts to position the film in the mainstream marketplace. And then to listen to the commentary while viewing the trailer, press the audio key on your remote at any time. Yeah, so you can hear the commentary by Terry Gilliam, the optional commentary to, I think, the trailer, but not to all of them. I'm glad I was reminded this. You don't hear his commentary on all the TV spots, but just on the first trailer bit, which is included here. But that's okay. That's perfectly fine, because he makes his points as well about how there's a bit of a challenge as to try how this was marketed, and maybe from his point of view, the marketing seemed a bit too, what's the phrase, maybe zany, funny, buddy comedy road trip movie type of thing, which from his vantage point, that wasn't the essence of the film. I mean, so there was some disagreement. I think Lena Bolsey, in other aspects, I think in the one of the commentary tracks, I think it was with Hunter S. Thompson, also expresses some frustration as to how Universal was trying to market this film versus what the film actually was, at least from her vantage point and from Terry Gilliam's vantage point, etc. So very fascinating as to the struggles and the slings and arrows in terms of many aspects of this film, including marketing. But oh well, c'est la vie. And we have a record of that, at least according to Terry Gilliam. So, okay, so that's the first part the film, and then we have the source, which is the second main component of the supplements. And so there's already a lot. Again, these are carried over from previous releases, but it's nice to have them again made available for this new Criterion re-release. The first one is Oscar Zeta Acosta, Dr. Gonzo. And so you select on this, and then we have a biographical photo essay. And then we have The Revolt of the Cockroach People, and then Thompson on Acosta. So what are these? Okay, we have in 1971, Oscar Zeta Acosta, an activist attorney and key figure in the Chicano rights movement, joined his friend Hunter S. Thompson on a road trip to Las Vegas. Portrayed in the book as the rip-roaring Dr. Gonzo, Acosta is revealed here by his son Marco in a biographical photo essay, and through his own words as he reads on camera from his 1973 book, The Revolt of the Cockroach People. Plus, Thompson reads from a piece about Acosta that he published in 1989. Okay. So there's a lot going on here. So the first is the kind of biographical essay, a photo essay, which is, again, you can, it's presented in this slideshow type of way. In the first one, biographical photo essay, so it gives you a little bit of a background as to who Oscar Zeta Acosta was, and again, from an understanding of how Dr. Gonzo appears in the film versus the real life Acosta. So that's the first thing, which is really key. And then the next thing here is Revolt of the Cockroach People, which is approximately 30 minutes. And this is essentially, well, let me select it here. And it says Revolt of the Cockroach People. It says, in 1974, Oscar Zeta Acosta appeared at the Festival del Flor y Canto, a Hispanic literary gathering hosted by El Centro Chicano at the University of Southern California. In this rare footage, he reads a chapter from The Revolt of the Cockroach People, which recounts his legal work and involvement in Chicano rights issues. This is approximately 30 minutes. He's on stage. It's essentially him reading from his book. He describes it as Chapter 8. And it describes a particular event involving police brutality and an autopsy and trying to remedy a sense of injustice, etc. And it's very rough. It's very vivid. Oftentimes it can go into quite unsettling places, disturbing places. Sometimes the language that's used is incredibly vivid, maybe over the top, and sometimes offensive even. But it's a showcase too of the prose skill of Acosta himself, and again, also his background as a civil rights attorney. So, and involvement in the legal rights and issues and scenes involving, among other things, police brutality, etc. So, really fascinating stuff. Again, very unsettling. Very disturbing in places, again, but quite compelling indeed. So please check this out if you can. And then we have Thompson on Acosta, which is in 1989, Oscar Zeta Acosta's son Marco reissued his father's books, the autobiography of a Brown Buffalo and The Revolt of the Cockroach People, with an introduction by Hunter S. Thompson. Thompson recorded a reading of this introduction for the Criterion Collection in 2002. So this is really fascinating. It's approximately 7 minutes, I think, and so we have this reading again. Hunter S. Thompson's relationship and his regard and his perspective on Acosta, and then in the context of the writing Dr. Gonzo is one of the key aspects of this. And so there is a kind of complex so respect or affection on the one hand, but also a knowing and not knowing on the other. I mean, it's a very complex relationship. So, but I think it's reflected in a sense of directness and honesty in this writing, which is again read aloud by Thompson himself. So please check this out if you can. It's incredibly illuminating, and there's further context involved in terms of Acosta or Dr. Gonzo, and this one of the sources, as it were, for purposes of the supplements. Next, going back to the source supplements, we have next Ralph Steadman Art Gallery, and this is another slideshow presentation. Really great. I mean, Ralph Steadman's illustrations are so iconic, really iconic. So it's great to have a collection of them here, again, for those who, for instance, might be new to the world of Hunter S. Thompson, Fear and Loathing, Las Vegas, Ralph Steadman, etc. So this is described as this collection of line drawings and color illustrations relating to Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas was provided by artist Ralph Steadman. To navigate the sequence, press the right arrow on your remote to move forward and the left arrow to move backward. To exit, press enter. So this is one of the great highlights in past releases, so it's great to have it carried over here. Again, Ralph Steadman's illustrations are just iconic. So please check this out if you can. Really wonderful. Again, it's a slideshow presentation. And then going back, we have Breakdown on Paradise Boulevard. And what is this? This is also something we've seen before, but it's great to have it carried over here again. And it says, in 1996, Margaritaville Records released a spoken word CD of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, featuring Jim Jarmusch as Duke, Maury Chaykin as Gonzo, and Harry Dean Stanton as the narrator. Presented here is an excerpt from that CD entitled Breakdown on Paradise Boulevard. This passage, also known as the taco stand scene, was never filmed for Terry Gilliam's feature. And so you press it, and it's a sort of audio version of it, and it'll take you to a still which has the cast and credits, as well as you listen to this excerpt. So it's really fascinating. The taco stand sequence. And there's a sort of interaction with the price of tacos and hamburgers and what's in the tacos, and it veers into not slightly, but potentially quite disturbing territory in terms of where they're going to go, etc. So and what lies beyond in terms of the horizons and the like, and the notion of Paradise Boulevard, and so we see some of the wild, zany, and disturbing aspects that are also part of Raoul Duke and Dr. Gonzo. So anyway, this is very fascinating stuff. Again, in this audio CD, almost radio play type of way, which is really, really great. So please check this out if you can. It's quite wonderful. And then Fear and Loathing on the Road to Hollywood. And what is this? This is the BBC produced documentary. And it's described as, in 1978, the BBC produced this feature-length documentary following Hunter S. Thompson and illustrator Ralph Steadman on a road trip to Hollywood by way of Las Vegas. This is approximately 50 minutes. And again, we have Ralph Steadman and also Hunter S. Thompson on display, talking about just talking to the camera, getting a sense of fear and loathing in Las Vegas, what it is they're trying to do, who they are. Sometimes it can get quite confrontational. We see the persona on display, on full display. Sometimes we hear Ralph Steadman reacting to this in maybe an affectionate, respectful way on one hand, also quite a startling way on the being startled as well on the other, and sort of the ferocious tour de force of nature like quality of Hunter S. Thompson himself, his personality, and all the way down to the details of his clothes. I mean, there's a moment where he's speaking, and what's more of a kind of a beautiful type of eyesore, the background of the room or his shirt. I mean, the pattern, it's amazing, absolutely amazing. So much material happening, and it's sort of on mind overflow. And then again, sometimes it can get quite heated as well. So this is really great, and it has an index as well. So in case you want to jump to a certain point, you can, because it's about an hour, shy of an hour, about 15 minutes. So really great. Fear and Loathing on the Road to Hollywood. So this is from 1978. So please check it out if you can. Okay, so that is in a nutshell what we have in terms of the supplements included with the Criterion release, which we've seen before. So a number of points here. First of all, I know and acknowledge that this isn't the whole breadth of everything that's ever been made in terms of supplements about Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. So if you want to go outside of Criterion for other supplements, of course you're welcome to do so, and I know many places have done that in a really great way, such as Arrow and other places. So please check those out if you want to have a more completionist take on this film, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Another thing to keep in mind too is that my understanding is that we don't get anything new on the occasion of this 2024 release. So everything has been carried over from previous Criterion releases, which have been great, by the way, absolutely great. But of course, it would have been really nice to see something new for 2024. I don't think we get that, but that's okay, because also at the end of the day, what we do get and what we've gotten before is epic, absolutely epic. I'm very glad that things were carried over the way they are. It's again, and I mean this in a very positive way. Every time I explore this film through the Criterion lens, I'm left exhausted. Just again, barely being able to keep up, if at that. But I think that's part of the great thing about watching this film is just you watch and learn about it, and then it's questions lead to more questions. But again, it's that wonderful never-ending journey with this film and Hunter S. Thompson in general. So, and it's reflected in what's what's on display here for purposes of the Criterion releases, including this most recent release in 2024. So please check it out if you have the time. It's really great. Okay, so now just to round out the conversation on this film, and again, I'm just overwhelmed by this film already. Every time I encounter this film, I'm so overwhelmed by it. Sort of the American dream question mark, American dream period, American dream exclamation point all at once, and it leaves me startled every time, including now. But let me just continue on to these final thoughts before we conclude this discussion. So that brings us to other contours of this release, the physical media release. I mean, this is what we've seen kind of before in terms of the look of this. I just want to note I always loved the way that this the earlier DVD had this interesting clear, almost casing outer shell to that, but we don't have that with the recent the last Blu-ray release or this recent 4K release. But that's okay. That's okay. It's the plastic casing, which is really cool. And then we have the wonderful artwork, which has always been on display for previous Criterion releases, as it is now. Art director Sir Habibi, art direction Ralph Steadman, designer Eva Waugh, art production coordinator William Breeze, print production artist Craig Phillips, art assistant Julie Sussman, and menu animations E&D Whalen. So really wonderful indeed. Yes, again, Ralph Steadman on full display here for purposes of this work. This film, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, is based on a book by Hunter S. Thompson. So very cool indeed. And I should also point out too the booklet. It's the staple booklet, which is what we've seen before, which is really wonderful. And I love this booklet. I've always have, and I always will. And I love the way it looks for the Blu-ray edition, and then for the 4K Blu-ray release for 2024. It has that great look about it, and also the writings here. We have A Pint of Raw Ether and 3 Reels of Film by J. Hoberman. Really great stuff. And then we have Jacket Copy for Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, A Savage Journey to the Heart of the American Dream by Hunter S. Thompson, and then Instructions for Reading Gonzo Journalism by Hunter S. Thompson. So we have a whole, just a wonderful wealth of writings here, as we always have had in previous releases, but we still carried over in terms of also pictures and illustrations and the like. So this is a great booklet, one of the best, and so my strong recommendation is to watch the film first, hopefully many times if you're able to, and then you can read the many writings that are on display here. This is one of the classic booklets, and it's still classic even to this day. Incidentally too, I should point out that I love the design in terms of the discs. This has always been a well, and we have the white color disc for the Blu-ray, white color disc for the Blu-ray, and the black color disc for the 4K. So that's really cool indeed. So please check that out if you can. All right. Ooh. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. The American Dream. Yes, on display for all to see, for those who are willing to take the trek into this world. Again, directed by Terry Gilliam, based upon a book by Hunter S. Thompson. And what a book it is. Yes, it is one of a kind experience indeed. Another film in the Criterion Collection, another 4K release of a Terry Gilliam directed film. And so, yeah, it's wonderful to have it re-released here for a continuing reminder of the legacy that is Hunter S. Thompson, and the legacy that is this film directed by Terry Gilliam, which is Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. All right. So, yes. Yeah. Thanks so much, my dear friends, for your time. I very much appreciate it. So until the next video, my dear friends, I very much hope that you continue to be happy and healthy and well, that you continue to watch a lot of great movies, including Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, including other films by Terry Gilliam, including other films in the Criterion Collection, and beyond. So until the next video, my dear friends, stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.